colleagues there in the state of Washington, especially as you point out, we deal with a very overwhelmed system here on the East Coast. Dr. Rhonda Meadows is the president of health management at Providence St. Joseph Health. She joined us on the phone from Everett, Washington, as Carol said. That's where it all began in the United States, or that's at least where we first saw the U.S., the first domestic patient.
Yeah, I feel like that our discussions with her and her team have really been helpful in kind of understanding the spread of the virus and the impact of it. Coming up, we're going to catch up with one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg, kind of the other side of this crisis, and that is taking a look at the financial markets and the financial sector. We'll get to that in just a moment. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are holding on to most of their gains. Healthcare is leading the way amid new efforts to deliver rapid testing for COVID-19 and a new vaccine candidate from Johnson & Johnson. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 314, the S&P 500 up 49, the Nasdaq Composite up 179. Most of Macy's 130,000 employees will be without paychecks starting April 1st. It is keeping only a handful of workers to maintain basic operations. Furloughed workers will keep their health benefits. Disney chairman Bob Iger is giving up his salary while other executives take pay cuts, with the company's parks closed due to the pandemic. Theme park workers will be paid through April 18th. As demand craters and surpluses build, oil is at an 18-year low, below $20 a barrel. And the price could go still lower with no sign of an end to the production battle between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Wisdom and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
News without analysis is like half a bridge.
Why is the debt to GDP ratio still so important?
Those things, once they're set in place, stay around for years.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, Carol, I wouldn't exactly call it a run on the bank, but there is a situation where banks are saying, do you really feel like you need to draw down that revolving line of credit that we gave you back in the day? Why don't you think twice, bro?
Well, I love this story. It is the most read on the Bloomberg in the past 8 hours, and it just reminds us about the interesting relationship, tricky relationship between banks and corporations. So we're going to get into that with our own Michelle Davis in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories. Check on trading with Charlie Pellet.
All right. Thank you very much, Carol Messer. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher right now. Let's get right to the numbers. I'll give you the story in just a moment. S&P up 63 points. That is a gain of 2.5%. The Dow up 468 points now, up 2.2%. NASDAQ up 217. That is a gain of 2.9%. Bottom line, S&P 500 index up for the fourth time in 5 days. Stay with Bloomberg to see where we close. Closing bell coming up, of course, 4 o'clock Wall Street time. Stocks are rallying as investors see glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. Small businesses, meanwhile, are looking for assistance from the federal government as the nation remains, much of the nation, under lockdown. Linda McMahon is the former director of the Small Business Administration, and she says those funds should be available as early as Friday.
Any FDIC-approved lender and even fintechs are going to be able to loan this money to businesses for them to hire, for them to pay their rent, their debts, to keep them going. And the goal is that then businesses can really start back up when we're ready to turn the curve on the coronavirus and get back into action.
American Express says it will freeze hiring after equipping more than 60,000 employees to work from home in response to the coronavirus pandemic. And Macy's, which closed all of its stores on March 18th in response to the coronavirus pandemic,
says it will furlough the majority of its workers beginning this week. Shares of Macy's, they are moving lower today. We've got Macy's shares down right now. Just let me give you the check on Macy's shares. Right now we've got Macy's trading lower. Macy's is down right now by 4 cents at $5.49. American Express, by the way, pushing higher, up by 0.3%. Again, recapping here, stocks higher. We've got gold down 0.6%. West Texas Intermediate crude holding above 20 now, 2014 a barrel, down 6.4%, and gold down 0.6%, 16.19 the ounce on gold. Recapping, S&P up 64, up 2.5%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, as Carol mentioned, it's the most read story on the Bloomberg, and not surprisingly, this is at the heart of the financial side of this crisis. Michelle Davis wrote the story. She's a finance reporter for Bloomberg, one of our top shots. She joins us on the phone from Vermont. So, Michelle, you, I'm sure like all of us, saw these headlines about corporations drawing down these revolvers. You went to the banking side, and what'd you find?
Well, so yeah, as you mentioned, I have been watching as lots of companies around the country have, just since March 9th, drawn more than $177 billion from revolvers. And that means that banks have been, at the same time, banks have been talking to companies and they've been saying, look, if you don't really need the money right now and you are just tapping this revolver out of an abundance of caution, we'd advise you to please not do that. And the idea is, it's not anything having to do with liquidity concerns. The banks say they're there and they will honor any requests they get for revolver drawdowns. But it's really, one person described it as, trying to take a hot shower. If everyone tries to take a hot shower at the same time, some people are going to be left with cold water. And so in order to be able to get money to the companies or the people that need it the most and the quickest, banks are asking, the healthiest companies to kind of stand down so that they can prioritize getting access to these other companies.
Well, what's great about it, too, I love this line in your story and your reporting, Michelle, is for Wall Street, it's not an issue of liquidity so much as profitability. Explain that.
So every time, well, first of all, revolvers are technically just very low margin instruments. Banks will extend them to companies as kind of a relationship thing, like this is here for you just in case, but they don't expect everyone to draw them down. A lot of them aren't even profitable, and they're seen as kind of an entryway into other, more expensive capital markets deals or M&A advice. And so every time someone does draw down on one of these, the banks have to put aside more capital because of, financial crisis rules. And so that does end up draining or hitting their profitability if everyone is doing it at the same time.
Well, and it's interesting, too, in your story, a really important nuance is that you found evidence that some companies are saying, all right, banker, I'm going to give you a break on this one. I'm actually going to pay a little bit more. I believe McDonald's did this to go get a short-term loan. So I don't do this at the risk of, maybe making you, Mr. Banker, and they're all Misters, it feels like, upset down the line and maybe not giving me the attention that I want and feel like I deserve.
That's correct. When I first started hearing that bankers were doing this, my first question was, why would any company agree to this? Like, why would they say, yeah, you know what, I'm just not going to draw down on this? And the idea is no one really knows what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks or months or years even. And so companies, see banks as a very stable resource for them. And the last thing they want to do is bother or put their banker, on bad terms. And so some of them, like McDonald's, have said, okay, we'll work with you on these shorter term revolvers. McDonald's actually went up for a 364-day revolving credit facility, drew down the entire thing, even though it hadn't yet tapped an existing $6 billion revolver that it had.
Well, and what's interesting, though, is this is also illustrating by companies maybe tapping different sources, showing that the system's working, right? That companies can access money if they need it.
Exactly, yeah. And this shows, like McDonald's, for example, by doing that, they kind of signaled that they actually have additional funding sources. I think for companies that are not as directly impacted by the economic fallout that's come from the majority of the country being on lockdown, if you can go to the bond market or go and get another bank line right now and show that you actually don't need the money, but you actually, want to have it just in case, that communicates to investors that you're in a strong position.
And I feel like, go ahead. I was going to say, I feel like banks are also signaling like, all right, you draw it down, but listen, I'm going to make it up somewhere else down the road.
And I think that's a really important point. And I'm glad you both made it earlier in the conversation, this idea of what we're really talking about is bank profitability here. And so as people read this story, there are probably a lot of people outside of Wall Street saying like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not going to make as much money, JP Morgan. Wah, wah. Anyway, that's a very technical term, but in any case. Michelle Davis, thank you so much. Great reporting. Most read story on the Bloomberg for a reason. A really smart look at how this is playing out, Carol.
Yeah, I think it's a really smart story. Exactly. And it's just the understanding too of how it all works, right? So I think it's really important that she wrote about it and that it's certainly something we discussed. Hey, I do want to mention a headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal, serious headline, but Italy set to extend its containment measures until Easter at least. And of course, we know Italy has been having a really, really tough time. So to hear them here's their visibility at this point. But, I've got to say, Jason, it's fluid. And we know that things can change dramatically, hopefully for the better, but we also do know for the worse. And that's how we have to look at this situation.
And also important to note that Italy, there have been some just glimmers of hope there in terms of at least the rate of infection slowing a little bit. And so them taking this effort is, again, a reminder that this is a long slog. I think we're all settling into this. As we said at the top of the show, that news from the president yesterday, a very different President Trump coming out yesterday and saying, look, we're in this at least from a stay-at-home perspective through the month of April. That was an important signal in many ways. And obviously, it's working to a small extent. Certainly, we have seen that. And we heard that from out west in Washington from our
Dr. Meadows. There. I was just thinking about what she said, that, ultimately, people are working on ways, whether it's better tests, faster tests. I keep hearing, too, David Weston did a great interview with the CEO of J&J talking about a vaccine, but he was talking first quarter, second quarter, maybe at the earliest of next year. So we've got to figure out, ways to contain this or mitigate this at this point. And so staying at home, limiting interaction, social distancing. I know it's really, really tough on a lot of individuals and certainly a lot of businesses, but it is something that we really need to do, and better to do probably a little bit longer than not to hopefully, minimize the impact ultimately that it has. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Massar.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
change.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fair housing. That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher, with the S&P 500 index up now by 69 points. That is a gain of 2.7%. The Dow up 523 points, up 2.4%. And NASDAQ is now up by 227 points for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That's a gain of just about 3%. Bottom line, S&P up for the fourth time in 5 days, even after a weekend full of negative pandemic news, as President Trump extended recommendations aimed at inhibiting the spread. The 10-year up 8/32, yield now 0.64%. Gold is down 0.5%, $16.20 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude is down 6.5%, $20.13 a barrel. Recapping, equities higher. S&P up 67, a gain of 2.7%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly and Carol Massar, and this was a story, let's be honest, we had to do this one, Carol Massar. So into this because we're obsessed with the world of fitness, and it's all that much more important right now. Let's get into it with Mary Pilon. She is the writer of the story in Bloomberg Business Week this week. It's on the terminal and on Bloomberg.com today, along with the editor of the story and editor at the magazine, Sylvia Killingsworth. Both of them joining us on the phone. Mary, I want to start with you. First of all, great piece. Help us understand what's going on in the world of boutique fitness.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So this is one of the many industries that I think was completely transformed overnight. This was considered to be a really booming part of the economy, you know, whether we're talking about the big players, your Crunches, your Equinoxes, et cetera, but also a lot of small businesses. There's a whole cottage industry of these boutique, you know, classes, whether it's bar or Pilates or dance studios. And then with coronavirus, a lot of them had to close their doors overnight. They operate with very little runway usually, so they don't know how to pay rent for the next, you know, couple of months. And, you know, there's 350,000 fitness trainers and instructors, most of whom work as contractors. So unfortunately, this has also meant a lot of people are out of a job, and it's unclear, you know, kind of what the future holds for them.
I have to say, I do feel like there's these tensions within the fitness industry because we go to these fitness classes. I love it because I do have a sense of community with all my friends and sitting in a class and doing something. But I have to say, this weekend I did a yoga class by a beloved teacher through Zoom, and it was 20 of us, 25 of us. It was pretty amazing. We could see each other, and there was a sense of community. Sylvia, I do feel like this is going to be an interesting time, and maybe there are some longer-lasting results on the fitness industry as a result of the virus.
That's absolutely the case. I think you're seeing, you know, you mentioned like yoga classes over Zoom. We also know about Peloton is one of, or the Mirror, for example, are those services where you can do a lot of in-home workouts. And I think you're going to see probably a lot of people shifting over to those businesses. And maybe, you know, when things reopen, who's going to stick with that? Who's going to go back to the studios? This is a really kind of like a tug of war between those two things. But I think right now they're trying to play nice with each other. The focus here was definitely those smaller business owners who have, you know, it's like usually an individual founder who goes off on their own rather than being part of a big gym. They take on a lot of risk. They take on a lot of debt. And, you know, now they're sort of reduced to essentially a staff of one. So we're looking at very much what is the, you know, sort of put the business on ice option. How does one person keep a small studio afloat for that time? And it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, it's funny, Mary. I mean, my inbox is just full of these, you know, offers, you know, including from folks who are in your story like Box Plus Flow, and many others sort of shopping their wares. How does it change the business model, though, especially for these small guys?
Sure. Well, you've got a lot of people racing to make these videos. And, you know, keep in mind, obviously, like at-home fitness is far from new. I mean, in some ways, it's almost like this return to like...
It's a return. Yeah, it's like a throwback.
And back then you had to watch the same video over and over and over again. At least now we have all this variety. And so there's been, you know, players like Beachbody who've been doing this for a long time. And a lot of, you know, the bigger players had a whole video library that many of their members either didn't know about or didn't use as often. So, or it was a subset of people who were really devoted to these companies. So I do think that we're going to see a big boom there. And I think that what's driving a lot of, you know, what you're alluding to is loyalty to studios. I think people who really love that, you know, local SLT teacher or bar teacher, it's a great way to support people and remain connected to a specific relationship you might have. But a lot of that's being, you know, built overnight. So, you know, we talked to Sadie Kurtzman, who runs Purify Fitness, which has a pretty big footprint here in New York, but it's all over the place. She's now a one-woman company, and she is doing her dance classes at noon and 6 on her parents' porch in Miami in quarantine. So, you know, it's, you know, she went from having a ton of really amazing studio space in New York to like, this is, and thousands of people are tuning in because they are so devoted to, you know, her brand of dance classes. So I think we're going to see a lot of that and that the scrappiness of quality sometimes can become part of what's endearing about it too.
Mary, what are we hearing about in terms of the stimulus package and the help that, especially since so many of these are individuals or they're contractors, what kind of assistance might be coming for them?
Sure. So, the gig economy, I kind of put quotes around that. That is in the stimulus package. Whether there's going to be anything specific for fitness or sports seems to remains to be seen. A lot of industry trade groups are already lobbying for relief. The big one that I heard from people is rent relief, right? I mean, if a lot of these studios can weather or get some kind of forgiveness, whether this lasts a month or 2 or 3, I think that'll make a huge, huge difference, because that's a huge cost, because location is such a big deal in this industry. And I think that's something that is being pushed really, really hard. So we'll see. And, the irony, too, from a policy standpoint, is this is at a time when people need to be healthy, right? Like, this is going to be a focus for a lot of folks. So it's interesting, because you have an industry that's really struggling, yet there's demand, right? It's a little counterintuitive to how we kind of think about business.
Yeah, totally. That's such a good point. And Sylvia, come back on in. I mean, I do think about this, and we've been sort of talking around this notion that we're going to have a bunch of businesses that are fundamentally changed by this crisis. How does this sort of figure in with other industries that you guys are looking at the magazine?
I'm really interested in what's going to happen in the restaurant and food industry. Yeah. I think you're going to see a very similar sort of crush on these spaces. Again, they're physical spaces that people join together to do an activity. And, you're going to see the same sort of crunch on rent and spacing. We're going to lose a lot of restaurants, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what we come out with on the other end of that.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. Thank you both so much. I was obsessed with this story as soon as it came out, and Carol and I think both saw some familiar names in here, things that we've done, folks we've talked to, like the CEO over at Beachbody. It's a really, really nice read. Mary Pilon wrote it. She is a writer for Bloomberg Business Week. She joined us on the phone, as did Sylvia Killingsworth, an editor over at the magazine. And I think a ton about this, and I know that you had signaled that you were going to do that over the weekend, because I think you and our beloved colleague, Peggy Collins, have the same yoga instructor, right?
We do. And I have to say, it was and this Zoom class, I mean, it was easy to do and sign up. And it was really cool that, it was very much like Everybody Kids. It's like the Brady Bunch, like all these different boxes. But you can see one another. You can talk to one another. Yeah. It was pretty cool. And it definitely, I would have never probably done it, if it weren't for this situation. So I think it's definitely opening our eyes to doing things differently. All right, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. And coming up next, Jason, you and I, we're going to take a look at the economic news of the day. Also take a look at that bond market.
Also, we're going to get into what's happening in emerging markets among all of this. This is a global health crisis, after all. Andy Brown, who we talked to intensely about China especially, he's going to broaden the conversation a little bit. So looking forward to that. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Massar, here on Bloomberg.
I love dogs and cats, short-haired, long-haired. I love you all, don't I, Bianca? But I don't love cat hair all over my carpet, which is why I got a job testing vacuum cleaners in the Witch Test Lab. We rub an exact amount of real pet hair into an exact area of real carpet to see which vacuum cleaners really suck it up. And the vacuums that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your home. Witch.co.uk. Our tests find you the best.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this back-to-work Monday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. Stocks are extending gains as investors see glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. The dollar rose, S&P up for the fourth time in 5 days, even after a weekend full of negative pandemic news, as President Trump extended recommendations aimed at inhibiting the spread. NASDAQ 100 index up more than 3.5%. Healthcare shares among the biggest gainers. Abbott Laboratory shares surging 5.8% after unveiling a 5-minute COVID-19 test. Right now, the S&P is up 69. That is a gain of 2.7%. The Dow is up 520 points, up 2.4%. NASDAQ up now by 224 points. That's a gain of just about 3%. 10-year yield 0.76%. And we've got gold down 0.9% right now, lower by $14 the ounce at $16.14. Crude West Texas Intermediate holding just at about $20 a barrel. WTI down today by 6.7%. Brent at $22.58 a barrel of Brent is down by 9.3%. Now, as for the global economic backdrop, Bruce Kasman is chief economist at J.P. Morgan Securities. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
The virus is spreading, the aggressive actions are spreading, and the stresses are taking place now across the world, and not everybody has the capacity to provide both the healthcare supports as well as the economic supports that we're seeing. So we think we're going to have a global economic downturn. It's somewhat staggered. It started in China in February. It's hitting the U.S. and Western Europe in March and April, and it's playing out now, I think, in a little bit of a lag across the rest of the world.
Airlines are underperforming the broader market as the coronavirus pandemic continues to wipe out demand for air travel. American Airlines down another 11.7%, Delta down 2.6%, Southwest lower now by 1.5%. Recapping equities, higher final hour of trading, S&P up now by 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's time now to do a little Business Week economics. The team has gathered remotely. Kathleen Hays, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Pennsylvania. Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. He's on the phone from New Jersey. And I want to set the table with a little bit of sound from Mr. Jim Bullard. He spoke exclusively with Bloomberg's Mike McKee earlier, talking monetary policy amid the coronavirus pandemic. Let's listen in.
It's a big country. We can carry, 10% more debt. It's not ideal, but we can certainly do it. And if there was ever a time where you wanted to do something like this, now is that time.
All right. So, Kathleen Hays, I want to start with you. Jim Bullard, always a strong voice, but he's really been out there, it feels like, over the last couple of weeks and bringing some powerful messages to the market. How do you read it?
Absolutely. And let's give credit to our team, starting with Steve Matthews from our Eco-Fed print team. Mike picking up on this today. We both spoken to Jim fairly recently. And what a change in topics, right? When I spoke to him, in early March, it was March 4th, in fact, he was concerned about the virus, but we were not where we are now. And I think it's terrific that Mike got him on the phone today, because I think people maybe need to hear from, a Fed official that, yes, it's a lot of debt, but we can issue a lot of bonds at very low rates. Now, of course, we've got the 10-year note at 0.676. The long end, maybe Carl's got some idea about why it's down now nearly a point. Stocks are higher, but in terms of news on the economy, we didn't just have Jim Bullard saying, carrying a lot of debt's okay. We also had Janet Yellen speaking at Brookings webinar saying that she sees that GDP could easily contract by 20% or so. But given how the virus progresses, maybe a stronger economy by the end of the year. Europe, though, let's take a quick stop there because the EU confidence number hits a record low. German government saying they're going to have their worst recession, certainly since the financial crisis. Overnight, it's interesting. Australia stepped up with a lot more stimulus. I think backing up wages, you get echoes of the United States there. China adding some liquidity. So overnight, we got other central banks joining, continuing in the same direction. I think bonds are a little bit problematic maybe right now with stocks rallying. But corporate bonds, more new issuances, and lots of demand.
Right, which is a good sign. Carl Riccadonna, come on in on all of this. Our chief U.S. economist. I don't know. What's kind of front and foremost for you on this Monday?
Well, the big question now is to watch those stimulus checks roll in and kind of watch your clock as you wait for them to arrive. The big concern my team has had all along is the speed with which the $2 trillion of stimulus actually gets put into the economy. And in certain cases, like unemployment benefits, that should be relatively fast. But in other cases, like small business loans, for example, in these small business loan to grant type of operations, that could be bogged down in the administration. It'd really take a while to arrive. And the other thing we're watching is when the actual rebate checks arrive to households. Now, Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin said he hoped it would be 2 weeks for the direct deposits to start landing. But if we look at past episodes, it's been much longer than that, and folks are really stretched thin at the moment, and they need those checks to arrive quickly.
And so, Carl, how much should we be making of the fact that, the calendar is about to turn over to a new month? Rents are due. There's a lot that's been made of that on the Bloomberg and elsewhere about this being such a critical week for the economy. True, false, or somewhere in between?
I think we're somewhere in between because not all rent payments are due on the first of the month. Some things are done at the middle of the month or the date the lease was signed, so it's not always that case. Certainly, as the month rolls over, though, you do see monthly credit card bills and mortgage payments and whatnot start to come into effect. So it's more the length that the crisis is lasting, more so than a specific calendar day. But when we do think of specific calendar days, coming up this Friday, we have the March jobs report, which ordinarily would steal all the oxygen out of the room. In this instance, however, though, it's just a snapshot of the first 2 weeks of the month when we were really still not in lockdown mode. And so it's going to be a bad report, but nowhere close to the type of abysmal shock to the labor market that we will see when the April employment, when the March report is released at the beginning of April.
I'm going to see if we can squeeze both of you in on this. Oh, go ahead, Kathleen. What?
I just want to say really quickly, I think really important for the markets coming up tonight, tomorrow morning in Asia, China PMIs. They were down to, manufacturing was down to 35 and change. 50 is the dividing line between contraction and growth. That could be a big market focus.
Well, and I just real quickly, Kathleen, first, do you think that there's enough being done that, we're going to have a downturn, but we'll be able to bounce back fairly quickly on the other side?
Well, I think that's the question. How many people can we keep in their jobs? How quickly can we get checks to people? To me, the key thing is if a business can keep going, number one, if it can keep its workers on its payrolls, the more people can do that, the better, because these people are going to get through, and a lot of them are still going to get a check, right? Right. So that is the question. Get the money there fast.
Carl, what about your thoughts on that? I am thinking about when we get. Oh, forgive me. We're going to actually go to the California governor giving us an update, Gavin Newsom, an update on the virus. Let's listen in, everybody.
If you have a line on ventilators, it doesn't matter if they're brand new. Maybe you have a few pieces lying around your basement or the house. I don't mean to be flippant. We'll take them. We've got the folks here in Silicon Valley that can do miracles with old equipment and refurbish that equipment. I just mentioned a few days ago that our community college system, they found 192 ventilators, not all of them in perfect shape, some of them used for training and the like, but we'll take whatever we can get. We currently have 4,252 ventilators that we've locked down. Our goal is to get to 10,000 ventilators. We're looking to procure new ones from around the globe, and we're hopeful that the federal government can assist us beyond the 170 that came into LA County, but if they don't, we'll be as resourceful as we possibly can. So on the physical asset side, that surge of 50,000 beds, we're making real progress. On PPE and lining up and identifying those needs, we're making progress, but still more needs to be done. But as it relates to personnel and people, nothing more valuable and nothing more potent to meet this moment. And so if you're a nursing school student, a medical school student, we need you. If you've just retired in the last few years, we need you. If you are looking to expand your scope of practice and have particular expertise in any particular capacity, we need you, and we encourage you to take a look at that healthcore.ca.gov website. 5 simple steps. We'll ask you basic questions, and we'll help you with your relicensing. We'll help you with the protocols and processes to get you up and running and get you out the door so that you can support the needs of people of the state of California all throughout our state. We've seen an increase, a modest 8.3% in terms of the total number of positives last night, 5,763 total COVID-19 positives in the state of California. But it's those hospitalization numbers, it's those ICU numbers that we are most focused on. And again, those numbers are starting to go back up again along the lines of our model. So the next few weeks are going to be critical in the state of California. The next few weeks, we're going to need more to flex and to surge and do more together to meet this moment. And before I turn it over to the doctor, I want to just remind people of how they can meet this moment. All of you that have the capacity to contribute can contribute most significantly by practicing physical distancing, by continuing the good work that we've done in this state, including over this weekend. We had to shut down all 280 parking lots in our state parks system. We saw a reduction in the kind of surge of activity in our parks and on our beaches compared to the previous weekend, but we want you to continue to do that. There's nothing more potent and powerful in terms of meeting this moment than practicing that physical distancing. Socially connected, let's be resourceful and addressing the needs of others. And I couldn't be more proud of our partnership with Nextdoor and the volunteers. Some 8 million people they were able to connect with, to check in on our seniors, to check in on people that are struggling with social isolation and may need not just food and medicine, but also may need a person to call, just check in and see how they're doing. So nothing more important for individuals, if they want to contribute in this moment, that continue to do the incredible work you have done in the nation's largest state to practice physical distancing. Number 2, I just want to remind people that if you know anybody in the medical profession, if you know people that you think are willing to contribute their time and energy in a compensated way, to go to this new website so we can meet the healthcare surge as well. So partners, across the spectrum, private sector, Facebook, the public sector, with the incredible contributions of nonprofits and civic-minded individuals, will continue to row in the same direction, continue to meet this moment as we have in the state of California. In addition, and I'm happy to answer questions, we are significantly increasing our efforts on homelessness. I'm happy to go into details around that, but I want to now turn it over to Dr. Constant, who has been part of our partnership with the California Medical Association, working across spectrum of healthcare professionals that helped us with guidance and was willing to, again, work with us to create the flexibility, to create the kind of licensing reforms that temporarily are needed to meet this moment. And I just want to thank Dr. Constant for that effort and her energy, and ask her to come to the podium and talk a little bit more about what we're looking for on the medical side for this surge.
All right, you've been listening to California Governor Gavin Newsom speaking there in Los Angeles, reiterating, I think, Carol, a lot of what we've been hearing, giving some details, some specific numbers, but also just going back to this idea, social distancing, physical distancing, being creative, things as simple as the yoga class you were talking about earlier, checking in on neighbors, but re-emphasizing this fact that this, by all accounts, is starting to work. They are starting to see some elements of this. And I should say, kudos to Governor Newsom. He was among the first governors beyond the state of Washington, certainly, to just shut it down statewide.
And also asking everybody in the medical field, right? Retirees, we see the signs. I haven't been in New York, but I've seen the news coverage of just, at the bus stops in the city, that there are signs saying people who are retired medical professionals, please, we need you at this point. And the California governor saying the same thing. Their cases have increased, but this is what we're going to see as we do more and more testing. We're going to see more of this. All right, let's get to World and National News headlines. Let's get to Bob Moon.
Carol, Jason, the man who will track $2 trillion in emergency coronavirus funding, has been chosen. Glenn Fine, the acting inspector general for the Pentagon, has been tapped to lead the newly created committee overseeing the biggest rescue package in U.S. history, that according to Politico. The Navy hospital ship USNS Comfort arrived today in New York City to help take some of the pressure off city hospitals overwhelmed by coronavirus patients. Rear Admiral John Mustin commands the ship that will accept non-COVID patients so hospitals can better focus on those infected with the virus.
This ship represents all that is good about the American people, all that is generous, all that is ready, responsive, and resolute.
The USNS Comfort carries 1,100 medical personnel. In his daily briefing today, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo reported there have been 2,739 deaths in the state blamed on the novel coronavirus. In terms of the overall numbers, 66,000 have tested positive, 9,500 people are currently hospitalized, 2,000 of those are ICU patients, 4,000 patients are discharged. That's an increase of 632. New Jersey has over 3,000 cases of coronavirus, according to Governor Phil Murphy.
So the statewide total of positive tests now stands at 16,636.
And
sadly, I must also report that we have lost since yesterday another 37 New Jerseyans to COVID-19 related complications.
And a painting by Dutch master Vincent van Gogh was stolen. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. And Carol and Jason, back to you.
All right, Bob, thank you so much. And Carol, one more thing I wanted to mention about Gavin Newsom that I saw over the weekend is he did give a shout out, I believe, to Bloom Energy. And you remember we talked to their COO last week. They basically have been retrofitting and fixing a bunch of ventilators. And as we were getting into what the governor was saying, he was mentioning this idea that they have a lot of folks there in California. I mean, this is the seat of innovation in many ways, basically saying, look, if you've got some parts, we've got some smart people, let's get after it and sort of get these put together and help people.
Right.
I love it.
The urgent need for fixes on this is certainly creating innovation and cooperation among companies and various entities. So really, really important. It's also really important, and we talked about this on our planning call, that we do have to remember, I mean, it's hard not to forget, this is a global story. It's a virus that's impacting both developed and developing markets. So we want to talk a little bit about that, specifically the emerging markets, especially Africa and the Middle East. Andy Brown is Bloomberg New Economy editorial director. He joins us on the phone from New Hampshire. And, you know, I have to say, Andy, I have been watching like Africa and India, like some of these emerging markets because of their populations and also because of their conditions that so many people live in and how the virus might impact them. This could be just incredibly damaging for these societies.
It is really scary. I mean, obviously the story here is that the coronavirus, the pandemic, it begins in China, it heads west, it ravages parts of Europe, it's rampaging through the United States. So far, it heads west, it ravages parts of Europe, it's rampaging through the United States. So far, the emerging world, the poorer countries of the world have largely escaped the worst effects, and that is about to change. They're next in line. Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, was writing the other day, he said Africa is on the edge of an abyss. And the problem here is that these poorer countries, they neither have the institutional capacity of China. I mean, China was able to mobilize these massive state resources to fight a people's war and largely contain the coronavirus. Neither does it have the advanced medical infrastructure that you have in richer countries of the West, or indeed their social welfare nets, which cushion the pain. And so it's going to be far, far worse for these countries, as you say, in the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and elsewhere.
And so, Andy, I want to go back to where you started. Help us understand how emerging markets are different when it comes to this specific virus, or candidly, any sort of pandemic or infectious disease.
Sure. So, they are by definition, many of them fragile economies, and fragile in a number of ways. They're fragile because they have already these appalling underlying health conditions. So if you look at South Africa, where the rand has collapsed, something like 7 or 8 million people in South Africa are living with HIV. You take a country like Egypt, 100 million people, around 10% of the population of Egypt are living with hepatitis C. So you have these underlying conditions exacerbated by poverty, and now they're about to be hit by COVID-19. That's on the medical side. On the financial side, many of these economies have been piling up U.S. dollar debt, and they've been struggling to repay that debt even before this crisis erupted. So now they're looking at debt repayment when their economies are in deep distress. Commodity prices have fallen, tourism revenues have collapsed, the dollar is surging, and they're going to have a much, much more difficult time now repaying these debts. Now, you take Ethiopia. You look at Ethiopian Airlines. I mean, one of the iconic airlines of globalization, along with Emirates and Cathay Pacific. It is a major foreign exchange earner for Ethiopia. Of course, Ethiopian Airlines is in deep trouble, like all of the world's airlines. This means Ethiopia doesn't have the hard currency that it needs to import drugs, to import emergency medical gear, gowns, and face masks, and so on. I mean, it's economically brutal and medically devastating for these economies.
Well, and the thing is, Andy, I mean, ultimately, once we get on the other side of this, I mean, we really need the global economy, developed and developing, to recover in order for the world to overall recover.
Exactly. I mean, the metaphor people keep using is a forest fire, right? Mm. So, you can contain a forest fire, but if you have stray sparks coming in, you're going to very quickly reignite it. And what we're going to have, this situation, is emerging economies acting as a sort of a source for showers of sparks, which are going to descend upon the countries that have already recovered. And the truth is that you cannot have global health security. You cannot really declare victory against COVID-19 until the most vulnerable countries in the world have themselves defeated it.
But you do worry, right? And you do worry that, I mean, right now the developed world is struggling to deal with this. And so their ability to even lend a hand to the developing world, it's just not there right now, or not to the extent we've seen in past crises.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at the way that, even within the United States, states are now bidding against each other for medical equipment. Well, that's going to be happening in the case of countries, and guess who's going to be a loser in that bidding war?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the other thing, Andy, before we let you go, just a minute or so left that I wanted to ask you is, we are seeing, sort of pictures, reading stories from Wuhan, where so much attention was focused earlier in this year. We talked about it with you at the time. You were well ahead of it as a journalist and certainly helping keep us honest on what was happening over there. As you look at that situation, what are we learning? What can we take from what has happened with China that gives us some sense of what may happen next here in the West?
Well, there is light at the end of it. I mean, that's the story from China. But the real lesson from China, in addition, of course, to lockdowns, is mass testing, contact tracing, use of technology, all of government effort, individuals, and we talked about this before, individuals in society taking responsibility for their own actions. We don't believe the numbers coming out of China. It's way worse than the numbers have suggested. I think that's very, very clear. But when I talk to my friends in China who are running factories and businesses there, they're telling me that pretty much China is back on, the economy is back online. Their big problem now is the rest of the world, that their export markets are now being slammed, the United States and Europe.
All right, Andy Brown, always good to catch up with you. Really good context and a very important story. And we should note that we're going to get another angle to this later on in the program when we talk to the CEO of Oyo Hotels.
Yeah.
They're the second largest hotel company in the world, and they are operating primarily there in India.
Yeah, and they certainly have been making some changes because of the virus, so we'll get into that with the CEO. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks remain higher in the final hour, with the S&P on track for its fourth gain in 5 sessions. Investors see glimmers of optimism in the battle against the coronavirus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 638, the S&P 500 up 82, the Nasdaq Composite up 253. Southwest Airlines CEO says the company is living day to day as demand dries up. In his weekly message, Gary Kelly urged employees to save wherever possible. Southwest has cut more than a third of its schedule. L'Oreal has withdrawn its 2020 forecast, blaming a lack of visibility on the timing of an end to the health crisis. The beauty company sees first quarter sales falling 5% from last year. With stocks well off their highs amid the pandemic, younger investors see a buying opportunity. Firms including TD Ameritrade and Betterment report a surge in new accounts, even as withdrawals among existing clients rise. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about.
Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Experts like to be part of Bloomberg surveillance.
What does the new Europe look like?
For the same reason we're recommending it to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, well, we are keeping an eye, obviously, on the equity markets today, Carol, and looking forward to hearing from Dave Wilson, as always, with his chart of the day.
Yeah, looking forward forward to that. First up, though, let's get another check on your top business stories. Also, I'll look at the trading day. We've got roughly 29 minutes to go, Charlie Pellet.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely right about that. High for the day on the Dow, up 660. That was a gain of 3.1%. Here's where we stand now. We've got the Dow up 529 points, up 2.4%. S&P 500 index have been as high as 84 points, up now by 71. That's a gain of 2.8%. NASDAQ advancing now by 3%, higher by 226 points. Bottom line, stocks extending gains as investors see glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. S&P 500 index is higher for just about the fourth time in 5 days. Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis President Jim Bullard says adding trillions of dollars of borrowing to the U.S. national debt is necessary. Fiscal support because of coronavirus-related shutdowns and will not hamper the country's ability to grow in the future. Bloomberg Radio and Television sat down with Bullard. He talked about a number of other topics, including efforts to boost the U.S. economy and help small businesses.
Did want to see pandemic relief. I wouldn't call it stimulus. I would call it pandemic relief. What I interpret the program as trying to do is stabilize incomes and stabilize businesses as we work our way through this investment in our national health over the next couple of months here.
Walt Disney Chairman Bob Iger will give up his salary, and other executives at the company will take cuts in pay in response to park closings and other hardships tied to the coronavirus. Shares of the Walt Disney Company are trading higher now by 1.9%. And two of America's largest health insurers, Cigna Corp and Humana, say they will waive out-of-pocket costs for patients who need treatment for COVID-19. That announcement coming over the weekend. Shares of the insurers are both higher. For instance, Cigna up now by 9.3%, Humana up by 4.4%. 10-year yield 0.69%, gold down 0.8%, 16.14 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude dropping 6.5% now at $20.11 a barrel. Barrel of Brent is down by 9.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. And Carol Massar, I have to say,
Jason Kelly.
I wanted to pick up on something that Charlie mentioned over the course of that newscast, which is CEOs and chairmen, and in this case Bob Iger, giving up their pay. We're seeing a lot of that, and I have to say, I like it.
I have to say, too, I did a family conference call, FaceTime, with a bunch of my family around the country, and we had that conversation. I kind of did a little, not scientific survey, but I'm like, so-and-so, should we do a bailout? So-and-so, should we do a bailout? Because I was curious to see what, my family had to say, kind of go across America. And what folks, my family was saying.
When you see the Masters, you see America.
There's a lot of Masters out there.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, the feedback was, and I feel the same way, if you're going to get some assistance, then there's got to be something with executive compensation or buybacks. And I think, CEOs, and I love them. We talk to them all the time, but they have done well when it comes to pay packages, certainly coming out of the financial crisis. The average worker, not so much. And so I think we need to be looking at this very closely, and it's time for workers to, be heard.
Well, this is, one of the consistent criticisms that is heard around private equity, right? That they have this system set up that feels to some people and looks to the outside world as a heads I win, tails you lose sort of situation. And I do think that as all of this reckoning happens, that is something that people are starting to question more and more. Now, there's a long way to go in terms of the massive pay gap that we see in many companies between the top job and the line worker. And yet, you do have a sense that even if it is largely symbolic, Bob Iger, I think it's fair to say he's going to be okay, not getting paid his $3 million salary this year. But it's notable and it's important. And I do think we are at a moment, if I may editorialize.
Are they giving up their stock options, though, too?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
There wasn't any sarcasm there.
I know. Well, but it's a relevant question. I mean, there was another CEO, and his name escapes me at this moment. I believe it was the CEO of Texas Roadhouse, who was saying he was giving up his salary and bonus.
Yeah.
So that's a reasonable chunk of change in terms of current cash flow and things like that. I mean,
this is about survival of their companies also, ultimately.
Yes.
Like, if you don't have workers or you let go of workers, and then when things turn around, you might not have workers to get. It takes a lot more effort, time to get those workers in. I mean, you need to start thinking about what's the best for your company. If you are the head of a company, whether it's publicly held, and especially if it's publicly held, you also need to think about your shareholders. What's the best move to do to help the company overall?
Right. And hat tip to our producer, Ariel Agama, who just got in my ear and said Ken Taylor is the CEO of Texas Roadhouse. I mean, it speaks to this larger moment that we're in, again, editorializing slightly, around shared sacrifice, and we keep hearing this from guests that we're talking to. And, one of the things that Andy Brown brought up when it related to China, of all places, was this notion of individual responsibility. And that extends from the corporate suite down to individual choices in terms of not going to a restaurant, not going to the beach, not going, and hanging out with your friends. These are the things that these are the choices everyone's having to make.
It goes back to a couple of things. I think about the Business Roundtable, and they said that there are multiple stakeholders when it comes to the responsibility of a publicly held company. And yes, shareholders matter, but so do other things. And whether, your work base, your impact on the community. I mean, there are other things at work here. And I mean, we're realizing that no one is immune from the virus, and other people, not everybody's going to need assistance on the other side in equal ways. And so we need to figure out how do we take care of society. And there's a responsibility, I think, from people who have done really, really well, whether it's as a CEO of a company or what have you, that I think there's a responsibility to take care of certainly others and certainly workers at your company.
Right. And the other thing we know from watching corporations and CEOs for a number of years, you and me, is that they tend to move as a pack, and it is much harder for someone to be like, no, I'm going to keep getting paid. I'm going to take my bonus when you have a lot of other people and high-profile people standing down.
You could see the interview, right? You're sitting down with the CEO after, Joe Schmo interview. CEO has said, okay, I'm going to give up my, or Jane Schmo. Yeah. is going to give up my salary.
I believe it's Jane Schmoo.
But you asked the question, so-and-so is giving it up. Are you going to do it? I'm not going to do it. I mean,
I'm not going to do it. I got to buy a boat. Yeah. No.
Or something.
Or something. Or, an island.
I'm just going to say.
I think, peer pressure is a real thing when it comes to philanthropy, when it comes to many other things. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that story because, maybe it's a coincidence that Disney stock is up. Maybe not. Companies doing the right thing, they tend to get support out there. All right, let's get to Bob Moon now. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, President Trump is standing by the administration's decision to extend restrictive social distancing guidelines through the end of April, while bracing the nation for a coronavirus death toll that could exceed 100,000 people. In hard-hit New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo says the death toll is already too high.
Whatever the number is going to be staggering. The number is already staggering. A human life is a human life. We've lost over 1,000 New Yorkers. To me, we're beyond staggering already. We've reached staggering.
Members of President Trump's coronavirus task force found out across media outlets to warn the virus spread is only just beginning. The Trump administration hopes to get lending to small businesses under the spending plan Congress passed, started by the end of this week. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Small businesses will apply for the loans to their local banks for speedy processing. Linda McMahon, the former small business administrator, said in a Bloomberg interview.
That would really be a good boost to the small businesses, keep them whole, to help these businesses hire back or keep workers on the payroll. And if they do that for the 8 weeks from the time they apply for their loan, then that loan will be forgiven.
The goal, McMahon said, is to have small businesses resume serving customers as soon as they once again stream through the doors. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Elite
advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
He spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
As a
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ higher and very close to the best level of the day. Got to stay with Bloomberg right through the closing bell. But right now, let's head over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks with a bid right now. The Dow currently up 650 points. S&P's gain 83, while NASDAQ climbs by 257. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.68%. Gold is down 10, and oil is negative. Leaders in the Dow, J&J, Merck, and Microsoft. Only Boeing fell. Transports gain 80 points. Nasdaq Biotechs rise 3.5%. Semis climb 3.2%, and the VIX is down by 12%. In other news, Italy reported the lowest number of new cases in nearly 2 weeks, and Saudi Aramco is set to weigh a pipeline stake sale to raise cash. It could fetch up to $10 billion. Live from the First Word breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the Drive to the Close. David Dietz is back with us, President and Chief Investment Officer at Point View Wealth Management. They've got roughly $7.5 billion in assets under management. Joining us on the phone from Summit, New Jersey. David, I hope this finds you well, your family well. Good to have you here with us.
Carol, we're all doing well. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, same here. I think we're all trying to make sense of just the day-to-day news, the hourly news updates. We do have markets pretty much holding on to their best levels here today. How would you describe kind of the mood of the market right now?
So it's really a conflict here between investors bracing for economic news, which is going to get uglier and uglier as layoffs pile up, unemployment rates go higher, indexes of activity are going to go down. Plus, of course, the very sad news of more infections, more deaths. Investors are bracing for that. However, arrayed against the other side are several things of hope here. One, of course, is we've heard some great news today. From, for example, Johnson & Johnson talking about a vaccine that is being worked on and developed. We had some great news coming out.
But it won't be ready. But I will say they also said it wouldn't be. It's like a first quarter, second quarter, maybe at its earliest of 2021. That's a long way away.
It is a long way away. And, of course, they're, of course, not the only company, biotech and pharmaceutical company, working on these things. I actually have a lot of hope that something else is going to be developed. And, it may get tested offshore and be rushed to permission from the FDA if it's available. But, of course, we also need testing devices so we know where we're in safe spaces. And Abbott Labs is now shipping a device that can tell in 5 minutes whether you're infected, 13 minutes to prove that you're not. So there's some help on the healthcare front.
And so, David, it feels like the advice that we're hearing on the investment side is similar to what we're hearing from the health side in terms of our own, if we are fortunate enough to be healthy, which is stay put, stay in place, and resist the temptation to sort of get out. Is that a fair, if slightly glib, characterization?
Certainly, every investor needs to check their risk tolerance and continue to confirm what their investment horizon is. But let's put this into context. We've never not come back from a health scare over the last 100 years. We've never not come back from a bear market, from a panic, and so forth. The question, of course, therefore, is how long is this going to last? We heard some news over the weekend that the stay-at-home rules could be in place for perhaps as long as June, but certainly that is much shorter than most investors' horizons are. And of course, the other thing not to minimize is the resolve, the utter resolve by policymakers, where we're just seeing record-setting amounts of fiscal stimulus that's soon going to be poured into the economy.
Does that worry you, though, on the other side as well? I mean, is there a debt burden that the U.S. government is going to have problems with, especially if we get into an economy that slows down where the tax receipts aren't there?
I think most people would love to worry about what's on the other side. They want to get there, but you are absolutely right, Carol. I don't think it's going to be a question as to whether the government can honor the debt. I think ultimately what we've seen in other times where we've grossly expanded the amount of debt is an inflationary scare. And so I think given how low bond prices are today, how high bond prices are today, how low yields are, and the fact that we could see an inflation scare down the road, I think ultimately, perhaps a year or two down the road, inflation could be the problem, even though it's very hard to believe that now.
And so, David, how do you invest? How do you look at stocks? How do you screen them right now? What are you looking for as you work through it with your team?
Well, we start with going back out to our clients and saying, this is the time to rebalance. Look at your legacy asset allocation and bring the stocks up to where they were before the downturn started. Then in terms of what stocks to buy, what sectors, I think job one is diversification. There is the tendency, however, to always go with what's been working. Maybe, consumer staples, utilities, some of the bulletproof balance sheets to some of the tech names, and there's certainly a solid place in your portfolio for that. But you may also want to take advantage of this downturn and look at some of the more cyclical names, which, if ultimately this stimulus does work and we get past this health scare, should have some of the biggest rebound.
Is there anywhere you don't want to be right now, David, in terms of sectors? I mean, we just talked about Macy's. I mean, they're laying off almost all of their workers. And I know that that's been a troubled retailer for some time, but is there any industry, any sector, any name specifically that you just don't want to touch right now?
Well, certainly those trends that were in place, like the transition from in-store purchases to online, seem to be getting accelerated during this downturn. So those are things that you really have to look at, who are the survivors and who aren't. But I would have to say the biggest things I would avoid is some of these smaller biotech names and so forth, which have gone up tremendously on hopes of some sort of drug that's really unproven. And, of course, some of the manufacturers of consumer staples. I think you're a little late now to be getting into cleaning supplies and things along those lines. Other than that, I think everything can work.
All right, we're going to leave it there. David Dietz, great to catch up with you. Glad to hear that you and the family are well there in Summit, New Jersey. David Dietz is the president and chief investment strategist at Point View Wealth Management, joining us on the phone from New Jersey. And it's been, I dare say, Carol, a little bit nice to just see a kind of little bit of an up day on the markets. Not a wild swing, a nice healthy gain, but
orderly.
Not one of these. Yeah, orderly, I think is a really good way to put it.
And this is coming after we were up 10% on the S&P 500 last week, right? So it is nice to see that we've actually made back some ground. Certainly if you're a bull in the market, if you're shorting the market, you probably have made some decent money here over the last couple of weeks. But to see a 10% rise in the S&P last week and then another 2% today, I do think that there's, like you said, a lot of acceptance of the new reality. Here's where we are.
Yeah.
It is not something that we can flip a switch and get back to normal tomorrow. This will take some time, and we've got to figure out how do we shore up the economy, businesses, individuals to get through that so that when we do get through on the other side of the virus, we're in a better way.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. 1986, Texas women's basketball beats USC in the national championship, completing the first undefeated season in women's college basketball history.
Perfect season for Texas. They finished 34-0. The number one ranked team from beginning to end, winning their first NCAA championship and becoming the first NCAA team to end the season undefeated.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ rally into the close. Best level of the day. That's Gregory Crane, Director of Security, going solo at the New York Stock Exchange, ringing that closing bell. Stocks rallied as investors saw glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. The dollar rose. S&P 500 index advancing for the fourth time in 5 days, up 85 points. That was a gain of 3.4%. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 688 points, higher by 3.2%, while the NASDAQ Composite Index rose 271 points, up by 3.6%. 10-year down 10/30 seconds with a yield of 0.70%. Mike Wilson is Chief Equity Strategist at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, and on Bloomberg Television this morning, he said a retest of S&P 500 lows is unlikely.
Well, it's not going to be straight back up. We're going to get more bad news. We're going to get some good news. And I would say from here, as a credit investor and also as an equity investor, you need to be more idiosyncratic in your approach. We had the beta move down. Everything got repriced. Obviously, some things got thrown out with the bathwater that shouldn't have been. And that's where the opportunity is now to start sifting through and saying, okay, well, these guys are going to make it, and it's priced too cheaply.
Gold down 0.4%, $16.22 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude tumbling today. WTI down 6.2%, $20.19 a barrel. A barrel of Brent crude lower by 8.9%, $22.72 a barrel. Oil at an 18-year low as coronavirus lockdowns cascaded through the world's largest economies, leaving the market overwhelmed by cratering demand and a ballooning surplus. American Express says it will freeze hiring after equipping more equipping more than 60,000 employees to work from home. American Express up today by 1.7%. Macy's, which closed all of its stores on March 18th in response to the coronavirus pandemic, says it will furlough the majority of its workers. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle.
Damn, Sippy, you got some moves. And I'm moving on from town to town.
Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
It is time to take a look at some of the movers and shakers on this Monday, kicking off a new trading week. Just keep in mind, we're going to wrap up the month of March, so we'll see some rebalancing. We're going to watch that certainly tomorrow as we wrap up the month. As for the big picture on this Monday, S&P 500, most names in the S&P 500 higher today, 393 names showing some gains, 112 lower, Jason. So definitely much more of a bullish tone, and, you know, a lot of names seeing some, gaining some more ground after last week's rally.
Yeah, interesting to look at some of those names. Macy's, we talked a little bit about. They are furloughing, better than 100,000 workers. It looks like the energy side of the equation, Apache, not doing well. What else are you seeing out there?
Well, I just want to take a look at the major industry groups real quickly, just to see today how broad-based this was. Yep, all of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500 were higher. Top group, healthcare. And I do feel like if we had one of the themes today was everybody, it feels like in the healthcare industry, is just working, overtime to figure out better tests, faster tests, a vaccine, different treatments to get this under control. So healthcare names as a whole in the S&P were up almost 4.7%. Information technology, that's a lot of your, big tech names. They were up about 4.25%. Bottom of the pack, energy names, but still up, Jason, about 1% here.
Right. And, the healthcare conversation is an interesting one, and hearing David Dietz and his thought process around that. I mean, certainly what investors seem to be hearing is this idea of, okay, maybe we're, getting some traction both on the vaccine front, but also, more importantly, the testing front, and that is giving people some hope that maybe there's some coalescing around that, and we'll see some real action there. And that's why I think 2 or 3 of the biggest gainers on the S&P are healthcare related, right?
Exactly. I want to get back, though, to something you said. We were talking earlier about CEOs saying, you know what, we're going to give up all my pay, half my pay or something, and give it to workers, especially of some of the publicly held companies. You mentioned Disney earlier. That stock was actually up, as you pointed out, up about 3.5% in today's session. Goldman, though, came out. They highlighted some contrarian calls on stocks like Las Vegas Sands, Marriott International, Uber Technologies, and I think also Disney. And they are saying that, some of these, they're calling them coronavirus picks. So maybe that's why we saw some of these names on the move today. Yeah, interesting. All right, let's take a look at volatility, if we may. The VIX down quite a bit, double digits, 12.7%. It fell, closing at 57.22. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up. Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door. It's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Hey, Dave Wilson, back with us for a double shot. Let's start with your chart of the day.
Absolutely, Jason. I mean, you're looking at the biggest getting bigger within their industry groups. That's the point of it. Looking at Amazon.com, that, in a bear market, it's becoming even more dominant within the consumer discretionary area of the S&P 500 than it was in the preceding bull market. I mean, you saw last week that it got above 45% of the total market value of all the companies in that consumer discretionary index. And, of course, you're covering retailing, automaking, home building, and a whole lot of other areas there. And you've seen a similar sort of move, although not as abrupt necessarily, taking place within technology. Microsoft and Apple, $2 billion or $1 trillion companies. It's hard to still think of that number. But anyway, together, they account for 40% plus of the S&P 500 technology index's market value. So even though we've shifted to a bear market from a bull market, those biggest companies are becoming increasingly dominant. That's the point of the chart. And if you want to know more, send me an email. I'll get it to you along with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Right. The dominance just continues.
And real quick, your stock of the day, Dave?
Matthews International. Now, this is a company with a business that stands to benefit from the coronavirus. Unfortunately so, because they make caskets, headstones, other funeral products. They're also in marketing and industrial automation, a bit of a grab bag of businesses. The ticker is MATW. The shares have traded since 1994. They peaked at a record in January 2017, have come down as much as 76%. Since then, earlier this month, you saw the lowest price for the stock since 2001. Yet now it's all about cash. And Matthews actually just extended its bank financing agreement. So we're talking about a revolving credit facility, a term loan, and a financing deal for accounts receivable. Put it all together, you're talking about as much as $900 million of potential borrowing. And so it went over well. Matthews up 12% on the day, and that was the biggest gain for the stock since 2002.
Wow. Big gain.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can see why that stock is going up. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Catch up with you tomorrow. Coming up, several interesting conversations, Carol. Really looking forward to the last couple hours of this show.
Yeah, me too. First of all, we're going to get the really behind-the-scenes story of what was going on at General Motors, right? Being asked to create respirators. Our David Welch really getting the lowdown on that. And then we're going to talk with a member of the Columbia University team that is looking for some way to control and manage the virus. And so looking forward to that. That story was the cover of Business Week magazine. And then we've got a couple of leaders that are going to talk to us about running companies and then just leadership at this time.
Absolutely. One of whom is retired General Stanley McChrystal. He's been on this program before. You've interviewed him, I believe, at Breakaway last year,
I did.
if I recall. And also a member of the Bloomberg 50, Ritesh Agarwal. He's the CEO of Oyo Hotels, second largest hotel chain in the world, working primarily in India. So all that ahead. Stick with us. In the meantime, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Hi, Jason. It's Ed in San Francisco.
Oh, Ed. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Easily forgettable.
Oh, very memorable.
I'm kidding. Thank you. I had to plead for that. New York and California are racing against the curve to get enough healthcare personnel and equipment to fight the coronavirus. This while the case numbers are different. In New York, the total number of infections has slowed, although the deaths have increased. Governor Andrew Cuomo is again asking health officials to come forward now.
We need relief. We need relief for nurses who are working 12-hour shifts, one after the other. We need relief.
And should note the hospital ship Comfort has arrived in New York and will need staffing as well. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom says the state expects a large surge in cases over the next several weeks and is trying to bring in part-time, retired, and medical students quickly into the healthcare system. He says if that works, the state will be able to keep up.
Over the course of the next few weeks, we are very confident that in the aggregate, and that's a distinction, in the aggregate, that we will be able to resource the needs both physically with the human resources.
Newsom says although there's been a doubling of cases in the last 4 days, he feels confident the system will work. The governors of Virginia and Maryland have issued stay-at-home orders, and Dr. Deborah Birx says smaller communities need to prepare right now.
The metros and the rural areas don't take care now. By the time you see it, it has penetrated your community pretty significantly. And that's what we're concerned about. And that's why you have to prepare even though you think it's not there.
And globally, the World Health Organization says there are some signs of stabilization in Europe. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio. Back to you, Jason and Carol.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
An analysis from an entire continent.
Are we moving through the worst of the European growth slump?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Is there a sense that the environment for multinationals in Ireland is becoming a bit more difficult?
Worth remembering.
What indicators are you looking at?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. An update for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ closing at the best level of the day as investors saw glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. S&P 500 index up 85 at 2626. That was a gain of 3.4%. The Dow up 691 points, up 3.2%. NASDAQ up 271 points, up 3.6%. Abbott Labs surged after unveiling a 5-minute COVID-19 test. Abbott shares up today by 6.4%. 10-year, the yield now is 0.71%, down 13.30 seconds. Gold down 0.4%, 16.21 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 5.7%, 20.27 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser here on a slightly more mellow Monday. It's not quite as frenetic as it has been. So let's understand where big investors stand in all of this. Tom Stringfellow back with us, President and Chief Investment Officer of Frost Investment Advisors, joining us on the phone from San Antonio, Texas. And Tom, you know, one of the first things I want to ask you is first how you're doing, how your family is doing, and also give us a sense of what's going on in San Antonio as it relates to all of this, because obviously we have a very myopic view, or can have a myopic view, sitting here in the tri-state area.
Jason, I appreciate being on. This is the first time from San Antonio, which says a lot about what's going on across the country and I guess the globe, and it really is interesting because the view from San Antonio looking out the rest of the world is kind of surreal in that the impact really hasn't hit home, other than we're taking the precautions that everybody else is taking, which is social distancing, working off-site where possible, and which brings up a whole different set of conversations, which is how does one work from home when that's not been the trajectory many of us have been on over the last several years. And I can tell you it's coming along just fine. I'm finding out that there are ways to work from the house, although I'm still having that cabin fever. Had to come in today, the office, for a little bit to get on the phone and do a few things. And, I'm kind of missing it, although I can see how people can get used to working from the house. And I think that sets a new trend in investing in business startups going forward, and how can we make things more efficient, whether we're on-site or off-site.
I do wonder, too, I'm just looking, I guess in Texas, there's about 2,900 cases, I think. I was just looking for the most recent
big
number.
State.
It's a big state. Got a lot of family there, and I know Jason, too, having lived there. I guess what's interesting is, what are the conversations? Are you anticipating that what's happening in other parts of the country, that it's just a matter of time before Texas is dealing with a similar situation? Maybe not of the magnitude of New York. Let's hope not. But I do wonder what the conversations are. What's the planning and expectations?
Well, and it runs a gamut from we need to, go home, hunker down, get ready for this, to, the other option of the spectrum, which is, why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. We don't have the kind of issues where you've got on the East Coast or West Coast with, housing stacked on top of each other, literally. We've got more open space. And, I suspect that's the same mindset everybody's had across, the globe as, these things have developed and have hit swiftly. So, we're certainly prepared for it, or getting prepared for it. It's top-of-mind awareness as we're getting the counts, which are nowhere near what we see in your part of the country and across the globe. But it's still top-of-mind awareness, which has really been, I would guess, the catalyst for the markets performing the way they have, because we're an emotional species, and when we hear these kind of headlines, it's kind of the OMG factor. It's fight or flight.
Yeah.
Right. And so, as you look across what your clients are asking you, Tom, what is their level of worry, and what is their sort of temperament, I guess, as they work with you to figure out what happens next as they plan?
Sure, and that really is a great question, because I suspect here in our part of the country, we've got as broad a spectrum of clients, both in-state, out-of-state, across the nation, so they've got different perspectives. And what I've heard more times than not, it's not the oh my God, what happens if the coronavirus hits? I guess that's ingrained in us now that it could happen, but it really is the conversation of, okay, the market has fallen this much. Have we hit the lows? What do you think? Should we get back in? And in the last few days, I guess the latter part of last week through today, conversations weren't how do we hide from more damage, but really how do we step into this, and what's the best risk-off method to start getting back into the markets. So,
do we know? Do you have visibility on that, or what is the method that you're suggesting at this point? Or are you telling people to put money to work, new money to work?
It's for me, it's tiptoe back into the market. You put the flag in the sand, and and that means stepping in with whatever fresh cash or realigning whatever makes sense. Whether we're fully invested or adding new cash into the markets. I think there's valuations here that we have not seen in a long time. And if you believe the markets are going to eventually recover, and I've looked at pandemics, epidemics, market events, going back through, our history, since the 19th century, and I haven't found a time where investors didn't think it was the end of the world, and panic ensued, sell-offs occurred, and if you had the wherewithal to go in, buy, and or just last through it, you would have done anywhere from okay to, very nice. And I think we're at that stage. This time it's unique because there's a larger potential loss of life. So, it's got that human element to it, which makes it more emotional for investors today. But it doesn't detract from what the market has done over prior generations, when at that point in time we thought it was the end of the world for whatever the reason is, maybe not from fatalities, but, things were ending.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Tom Stringfellow. Stay safe there in San Antonio. Tom is the president and chief investment officer of Frost Investment Advisors, looking after about $5.1 billion down there in the Lone Star State. Coming up, we're going to take you inside one of the most ambitious efforts to try and cure the virus. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors banked on healthcare companies in efforts to fight the coronavirus, and that sent stocks 3 2/10 to 3 2/3% higher. The Dow rose 691 points, the Nasdaq 272, the S&P 85. Johnson & Johnson shares rose 8% on word it's working on a fast-track vaccine for the coronavirus that might be made available in a year. Abbott Labs shares jumped 6.5% on its receiving federal approval for a test for the virus that can provide results in minutes. The prospects for department stores got dimmer. Macy's, which closed all its stores nearly 2 weeks ago, says sales have fallen off a cliff, and as of this week, it's furloughing most of its workers through May. Kohl's will extend the duration of its store closures. Its CEO won't take a salary as it works through the crisis. Disney chairman Bob Iger will give up his salary, too. Other executives will take pay cuts until management sees a substantive recovery from closed theaters, theme parks, and idled cruise ships. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like? How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, well, coming up, we're going to talk about one of the most read stories of the day on the Bloomberg. A nice little TikTok, as they say, Carol Massar, on what's been going on at General Motors. We talked a lot about this last week as the president really went toe-to-toe with the CEO of that company, Mary Barra, over ventilators, over the Defense Production Act, and all that is entailed in getting private industry on board.
We came up on the Massar family FaceTime conference call, too, over the weekend. We talked about this. All right, let's get a check on your top business stories. Also look at those closing numbers once again on Wall Street. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. GM, a story we'll be talking about in a moment, down today by 0.3%. It was an up day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing and closing at or near session highs. A lot of the gains coming in the final few minutes of trading when stocks pushed higher. Investors seeing glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. David Dietz is president of Point View Wealth Management. He was our guest right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Let's put this into context. We've never not come back from a health scare over the last 100 years. We've never not come back from a bear market, from a panic, and so forth. The question, of course, therefore, is how long is this going to last?
S&P 500 index up 85 points today, higher by 3.3%. The Dow up 691, up by 3.2%. And NASDAQ up 271 points, a gain there of 3.6%. The 10-year down 9/32, the yield 0.70%. Gold fell 0.4%, 16.22 the ounce. Crude oil, big story today. Crude oil plunging another 5.5%, down $1.16 a barrel on West Texas Intermediate crude to $20.35. Abbott Lab shares surged after the company unveiled a coronavirus test that can tell if someone is infected in as little as 5 minutes and is so small and portable it can be used in almost any healthcare setting. Abbott Lab shares up by 6.4%. And Johnson & Johnson surged today after saying it will begin a $1 billion-plus effort with the U.S. government to develop and manufacture a vaccine against the new coronavirus. Johnson & Johnson shares up by 8%. Got to mention the airlines down again today. American Airlines Group dropping 12.7%. Delta down by 3%. Southwest lower by 3.5%. Again, recapping an update for the U.S. stock market. S&P up 85, up by 3.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. And do want to just kind of tease ahead a little bit because we will be talking with a member of the team up at Columbia University. They, too, are dealing with and working on finding a coronavirus treatment. They were recently the cover of Business Week magazine. So I'm really looking forward to talking with them, Jason, and see what they have to say about kind of where we are in this process, because I do think this is so crucial to us getting some an end to this at some point, right? Calling an end to the impact of the virus if we have a vaccine, or at least we have some kind of treatment that can help us deal with it, or faster tests, better tests. I don't know. All of this is important to getting this under control.
Well, and meanwhile, we're going to take you to the front lines of sorts, not of sorts, the front lines, let's be honest. Former retired General Stanley McChrystal is going to join us. He is a guy who has seen all sorts of warfare, and I think you are starting to hear more and more, and not just rhetorically, but real plans that feel like wartime planning in a lot of ways. Whether it is about, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, whether it is about sort of summoning and ordering certain things to be made in factories around the United States, whether it is marshaling hospital resources, as we are seeing done in New York City and elsewhere, and hearing from folks like Dr. Deborah Birx, who presumably we'll hear from again later in the briefing, the daily coronavirus press briefing, this notion that, this is headed for other parts of the country. So the preparedness, other cities need to learn what we have done, what we're going through here in some of the most affected areas.
Well, look at what Rhode Island has been doing, right? Yeah. Going door to door to find New Yorkers who are fleeing and heading to Rhode Island, and basically Rhode Island looking to be like, we don't want to become another hotspot,
right?
And looking to slow the spread. Going back to the National Guard, though, they were instrumental in working with Governor Cuomo in terms of transforming the Javits Center into a hospital, and sometimes you need the structure and organization of the military to get something done. And I was listening to interviews where folks were saying, it may not be perfect, but we have a timeline, we have a deadline.
Well, that was the key get it done. In that 60 Minutes interview last night, right? With the general who was putting all that together. And they showed him essentially walking through the Javits Center and basically saying, good enough. We got to do this. We got to get people in here. And you can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Meanwhile, do want to talk about a couple stories that are on the Bloomberg around automakers. Ford speeding up its ventilator plan. GM is going to accelerate their plans, although it's been a little rocky. So let's bring in Craig Trudell if we can. He joins us from New York City. He leads our auto coverage here at Bloomberg. So Craig, just in a couple minutes, help us understand what's going on with Ford specifically.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they announced last week that they were going to be making ventilators, and they were going to make a sort of simplified ventilator model that at that time they said they were going to be able to start production around June. And obviously we know now that some of the projections are that we may see a peak in cases well before that. So what Ford has done in the last few days, and perhaps with some urging from the president having something to do with it, they've actually settled on an even simpler model that they're going to be able to make in the next 3 weeks. They're targeting the month of April 20th to start production of this particular ventilator. It's still a collaboration with GE Healthcare, but they're also starting to sort of iron out some details of how exactly they're going to do this. They're going to convert a parts plant in Michigan, and their goal is to make 50,000 ventilators within the next 100 days.
Okay, so interesting. And is this under the Defense Production Act, or is this just Ford acting on its own?
This is on their own, and you mentioned that act. On Friday, we really had a lot of fireworks with Trump and General Motors, where General Motors is working with another ventilator maker called Ventec.
Right.
And we understood that they were, really making a lot of progress. We actually, were sort of under the understanding that the company was the companies were sort of waiting on the federal government actually to sort of write some checks and make some decisions. And strangely, that's when we saw some angry tweets from the president, where he was critical of GM and even critical of Ford. He sort of threatened to do an order, but actually backed off that as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And there's more coverage at Bloomberg.com. Craig Trudell, thanks for checking in with us really quickly. Let's get back to World and National News headlines, and let's get back to Bob Moon.
It's Ed again, Carol. It's okay.
Oh my
you guys
God!
got me. No, it's
you know
okay.
what?
Sorry,
I have lost all concept of what time it is. This has been a
It's
weird
all
day.
right.
Ed Baxter, I am so sorry.
No, I'm not sensitive. Trust me. New York is reporting the number of infections has slowed down, but the number of deaths in New York City continues to increase. Mayor Bill de Blasio says equipment is a major concern.
The thing I'm worried about right now is ventilators overwhelmingly.
And the governor is asking healthcare professionals to step up and join the fight. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom says a new surge of cases is expected.
A doubling of the number of hospitalizations related to COVID-19. In the last 4 days, double the population that's been hospitalized. We've also seen a tripling of the number of ICU patients in our system in the last 4 days.
He also is putting out a call for healthcare professionals, part-time, retired, medical students to get into the system very quickly. And he says the state is acquiring beds and PPE to be able to keep up with that surge. He says the models show that anyway. Meanwhile, why did the president change course on an Easter opening of the government? Dr. Anthony Fauci.
So we had some intensive conversations with him, and we convinced him. He listened, and we said the better part of valor would be to extend them until the end of April, when we think it would peak and start coming down.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says increasing aid for states, bolstering worker safety protections, providing free treatment for COVID-19 will be priorities for the Democrats moving forward. Global news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Ed Baxter in San Francisco. Now back to Jason and Carol.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
And learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at bevel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks rallied as investors saw glimmers of optimism in efforts to deliver rapid testing for the new coronavirus. S&P 500 index up for the fourth time in 5 days, up another 85 points, now at 2626. That's a gain today of 3.3%. The Dow up 690 points, up 3.2%, and NASDAQ higher by 271 points, up by 3.6%. 10-year down 15/30 seconds with a yield of 0.72%. Gold down 0.4%, 16.21 the ounce. Crude oil fell more than 5% even after President Trump spoke with Russia's Vladimir Putin about falling oil prices. West Texas Intermediate crude down $1.25 a barrel to 2026. Brent, by the way, down 8.8% to 22.73. Recapping equities higher. S&P up 85, up by 3.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. Now, Business Week recently featured on its cover the Columbia University team racing to find a coronavirus treatment. One member of that team, Alejandro Chavez, assistant professor of pathology and biology at Columbia University, joining us on the phone from New York. Alex, great to have you here with us. That story, we were saying, Jason and myself, it was a must-read for everyone. So tell us a little bit about the work that you guys are doing with David Ho and the work that you're doing at Columbia.
Yeah, so I think basically there's a lot of interest to see if we can develop some sort of therapeutic against COVID-19. There's several different teams involved. Kind of the whole school is really becoming mobilized and really trying to see what we can do. The core part of the group that was featured in Bloomberg are trying to develop several things. One are antibodies against the virus that would prevent the virus from being able to infect cells. And then three other teams are actually all looking for drugs that could prevent the virus from either replicating or for being infectious. And so that's kind of what's going on from the kind of Bloomberg piece.
Right. And so, Alex, from the perspective of people who aren't nearly as smart as you are, help us understand what's different about this and what those differences mean in terms of how you attack the problem.
Yeah, so not all viruses are the same, just like people, and so they all have little differences. And the differences between viruses can be quite large. And so you can't take something that works on flu and automatically assume it's going to work for this virus. And in fact, a lot of drugs that work on flu work on processes that this virus doesn't even use. So, every single virus has a little way that they like to get into cells, replicate inside the cells, and get out of the cells. And it turns out that in the case of coronaviruses, we don't really have an approved therapy that we know for sure works on them. In general, they tend to just cause the common cold, and so there wasn't a huge incentive to discover